three angles. Bafedile, we'll come to you. I know you're at the mortuary. Heidi, you're outside one part of the building, but I want to go to Pule first, because Pule, I think a lot of people now talking about those witnesses that you spoke to earlier, especially on the loss of their loved ones. Tell me about that.
Yeah, definitely, Gareth. Quite really sad moment to be witnessing here, as you would see the inferno that wrecked through this building, where about a lot of residents, to a resident who was residing in this building here, and she says that they were paying about 1,000 rent to one of the alleged building hijackers here, and the person would actually collect money as well, where the tenants would pay. It seems as though there was no paper trail, or they were not depositing their money into their account, and of course the officials are saying they're looking into this matter. But also, as a result of what we're seeing here as well in this building, we now know that the Department of Government have established a committee which is sort of like an inquiry, working with the Department of Justice as well. That was released through a statement from the provincial government by the Premier, who was here with the President yesterday in the evening. I spoke to one of the residents as well, who's quite sad as to what happened here, who lost a sister and her one-year-old baby. You'd remember about 12 children died and were part of the over 70 people who perished here as a result of these wildfires that actually wrecked this building apart as well. So he's saying that he still needs to get hold of the family in Malawi, but he came here again just to recollect and see what is it that he could save, any of his lost documentation as well, explaining that he tried to save the lives of his loved ones as well, but was just overpowered by this fire here. And then I spoke to one lady as well who was residing here, the one who told us about she was paying rent, and they were sharing a kitchen and they were sharing a bathroom, which was divided by cart boxes. She's saying that she was injured. In fact, she remembered trying to escape through this building. She injured her foot. She's still waiting to receive medical attention. She slept here overnight outside the building, because it seems as though not all of the victims were taken into the shelters. She alleges that she was told that officials would come and collect them, but the officials did not come back, and as a result they had to as well. But it seems as though the ward councillor says they are currently assisting those who could not get into the shelters. But when we speak to other victims and residents who are residing here as well, they say that they have gotten assistance. They were taken to the shelters. What we also now understand, during yesterday's briefing, the city manager, Floyd Brink, said that they had established also a committee, which was, of course, a K9 unit, which will also be coming here just to establish whether they could try and find the remains of other body parts, if there were still other bodies which could be inside this building. But then there's still an issue of when the firefighters arrived on scene. Some of the residents who actually were trying to escape here tell us that the firefighters were late. When I spoke to an eyewitness yesterday, he says that the firefighters were an hour late as well. But the city manager, Floyd Brink, speaking to us in the evening, said that there is no such a thing. There is a record that can show that the firefighters were on time. And honestly, this is what we're seeing here, Gareth. And the statement by the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, which is quite scathing, I'm just going to read it to you, is saying that compliance with the city bylaws is non-existent across the city, and that is the building which was possibly not subject to any inspection. Now, when you look at the context of this whole story here, you'd remember between 2013 and 2014, we were told that there was an NGO and that was actually housing women and children who were abused here. This building was used as a shelter. There was a lease agreement between themselves and, of course, the city of Johannesburg. But after the lease agreement ended, this is where the whole chaos began, where building hijackers then came here, invaded this place, and what they would do then is to have people live in here and make them pay rent. They will come on a monthly basis and collect money for rent as well. Someone was then arrested by the Group Forensic Investigation Unit of the city of Johannesburg in 2019. The person was taken to the Central Johannesburg police station, but there was an incident. We are told that it seems as though there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute this alleged building hijacker, and therefore it means that the case collapsed. I spoke to the SAPS, and there is a case number which was registered in 2019. But from there, it seems as though the city has been losing the fight of inspecting some of these buildings here around the city of Johannesburg. Before I throw it to my parts, I just want to show you one of these buildings here, which I'm talking about, just across where this building was gutted by flames. You would see this building is non-compliant. There's actually a shack on top of the roof here, and it just goes to show you how there are many more of these buildings that the city of Johannesburg may have to look into in order to take back and reclaim back some of these buildings that have been hijacked. They've cited so many problems such as bylaw issues and often been taken to the courts, but most of the NGOs, such as the SERI and, of course, Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, have come out to say, look, we've been telling the city to comply and comply and comply. We're not just taking them to the courts, but they need to comply. But let's just take a listen to what one of the guys I spoke to who was residing here had to say about losing his sister and her 1-year-old baby, who is the youngest, and of course the elder woman who told us that she's injured and she's still waiting for assistance, and that she often would pay 1,000 Rand rent to those who were collecting the money here, who are allegedly known as the building hijackers. Let's take a listen.
Beskoki rent.
Malin.
Beskoka 1,000 Rand, 800 Rand, fan, Beskoka 800.
How many rooms?
Room only one.
Room only one. And share kitchen,
Room only one.
One room divided by pot. So nizenza kanjani manje?
Asazi linto yenu government asizama ngendawo ukuhlala. Yeah.
Sisters, and that's the hang for the sisters. It was then there from there inside the building. So the time that when the fire that coming, that my sister never tried to come out because there was more fires. So this means that the sister that died and the kids. Sure. I lose my sister and the kids.
How many kids?
One kid and the sisters.
How old was the kid?
The kids was 1 year and 3 months.
1 year and 3 months.
So.
Yeah, you can just see how broken he is, talking about the family member that he lost in this and the loved one, Pule. So very brave of him to talk to you. Heidi, stand by. I'll come to you in a moment. I just want to get a sense from Bafedile Moerane. Hi, Bafedile. So I hear there's some issue in communication when it comes to the mortuaries today. Just explain to me what's going on.
Not a good start at all, Gareth. Really bad communication from government officials. They have released a statement, and we also did an interview with the MEC of Health yesterday at Helen Joseph Hospital, having to say that all those who want to come and identify their loved ones, they should head to Diepkloof Pathology Service Center in Soweto. But this morning there was one family that was here from Orlando, and they say they are very much disappointed having to find that in this mortuary, it's only about 10 undiscovered bodies that have actually been burnt beyond recognition that are here. They have now been sent to Hillbrow to go there to identify their loved one. We spoke to the family representative earlier on, who is the brother of the deceased, Tebohopowe, who is actually saying that he's really sad, and he had the news yesterday and he rushed to the area at Marshalltown because he knew very well that his brother was staying there, and asked people around, and that's when they confirmed to him to say that he tried to jump off the window and he lost his life. instantly. So let us listen to what he said to us earlier on.
The thing is, for now, they told us our people that are here is the one who banned, like people are you can be able not to be able to be identified. So it's a lot of process here. So the second step for us is go to Hillbrook, because he's one of the victims who just fell there. So it's going to be able for us to identify him.
For how long your brother was staying here, and how did you hear about the news yesterday?
I was there in town yesterday, so approximately he's staying there in Joburg 5 years. Yeah.
How did you hear about the news?
I hear about the news, so fortunately there was one of my friends who just informed me. So I quickly act up quickly, and I take this thing seriously. So then I went to see one of the friends there in town where he was staying, because he's a well-known person who's playing pool there. So probably the girlfriend that told me and gave me information. So I got as much information as I can, but fortunately it was too late for me, because they already took them to the mortuary. But then people, they told me that already he passed away already. So I didn't believe it. Even now I don't believe it until I see with my own eyes that this is my brother, this is what's happened, and I'm able to accept it.
Do you have documentations that are requested here, the ID documents alike?
No, fortunately 100% I have those things. So I'm ready just to see my brother, that's it.
All right, so Bafedile, as I say goodbye to you, what is the next move here for those who have been told, because of this miscommunication, to go to a certain mortuary? What's your next move from here?
It will be the unfortunate part if at this point they are not really watching the news, because this is the information that we also received just a few minutes ago as the reporters on the ground. So government really, it has failed to communicate properly to say that only the undiscovered, the unrecognized bodies are here at Diepkloof, and the rest at Hillbrook. So we are definitely going to head to Hillbrook, and we will also try to engage the government officials to hear what has changed up to so far, because they did not come on time to specify some of the changes in relation to the identification process.
Yeah, it's such a traumatizing process to have to go through and identify a loved one, and now the information seems to be not up to scratch either. Thankfully, we have Bafedile Moerane. Bafedile, thank you. We'll come back to you later, so we'll make sure that those who do know or we need to know where to go, as soon as we get that information, we'll pass it on to them. So not a good start. Heidi, Giokos, and I'm afraid this is a part of the problem, isn't it? So now we're starting to get mixed messages. There's still the blame game at the moment as well. Just for viewers who've just tuned in, yes, it is a slightly different angle. We're now on one of the roofs of a nearby building with one of our camera team and Pule Letshwiti-Jones. He's now on that roof as well. But Heidi, as we look at that, there's Pule stepping into shot. Heidi, I want to come to you quickly. So where does this story go next as far as you're concerned? Victims are getting the minimum of help. We still have people sleeping on the ground outside of the building as well. What is it that we need to start looking out for today?
Yes, I think the tragedy here, Gareth, is that you have many who have opted not to go to the shelters. And according to the council in the area, this is because they feel and they fear that they will be deported, as many of them do not have the correct documentation. And a lot of that was burnt in this fire. We showed you these visuals earlier this morning, but let's just give you some perspective of what the building actually looks like in terms of what caused, or rather how the fire really damaged this building, claiming over 70 lives. Currently, what we are showing you is it seems as though some sort of security has been brought on the ground to ensure that nobody enters this building. The integrity of the structure and of the building has been brought into question because of the fire. And you have many that survived trying to get back inside as they feel that their part of the apartment or their part of the block has not been affected by the fire, and they want to go back into collect and get whatever belongings was not gutted by the fire. Unfortunately, that is not allowed. I mean, firefighters yesterday, Gareth, were indicating that they themselves had to be very careful how they move into the building for that rescue and recovery operation, because they were just not sure of the integrity of the building. This building has now been handed over to the South African Police Service. And the reason for this is because firefighters have done all that they can in terms of rescue and recovery, and now SAPS need to move in to continue.
Yeah, let's talk about that SAPS issue, Heidi. Forgive me for interrupting for a second. I'll tell you why. It's a perfect point for me to interject, Heidi. Sorry, you mentioned the SAPS. I want to go back up to the roof, Heidi. You led me there very nicely. Pule Letshwiti-Jones, you're with the police at the moment on the roof of a building across the road. Let me come to you quickly so we can hear what they have to say. Pule, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely, Gareth. Just like Heidi was saying, yesterday when I spoke to the Provincial Commissioner, Elias Mamela, he said that they had received the latest reports from the Group Forensic Investigation Unit here in the city of Johannesburg, which actually detailed that there were about 600 buildings which were derelict, decayed, and have been hijacked as well in the city of Johannesburg. That's a really an alarming number in terms of what the city is claiming to be doing when fighting and trying to reclaim some of these buildings. So just in front of me, you can see this is a view of the building that was actually burnt and wrecked apart by the flames as well. You can see how the windows have been damaged. Everything, it just looks like it was really a chaotic scene when this tragic, incident unfolded. But then again, when you speak about how some of these cities' buildings have been hijacked, on my left-hand side you can see we're standing on a roof or on one of the higher structures of a building, and you can see on my left-hand side that people have now erected shacks on top of this building. This building as well, we are told, has been hijacked and has been evaded by some of the people who are homeless and those who do not have the money to afford accommodation in the city of Johannesburg. It's not the only one. As you walk straight as well, you can see this another building, the shack again, that has been erected here on top of this building. So it just goes to speak about the concern the SAPS has raised. We're here with security, of course, but I just want to get to show you when we were coming up onto this roof, really it is quite devastating what we witnessed here, to see how most of these buildings have been hijacked, but people are living here. It goes on to give some reasoning behind why some NGOs have actually taken on the city to say that, but the city isn't inspecting some of these buildings, and that therefore there cannot be any blame shifting that's taking place. People sleeping here as well, as you can see on screen, Gareth. So the SAPS, like Heidi's saying, had said that once the scene has been handed over to them for preliminary investigations, an inquest will be then opened into what could have been the root cause to this building having engulfed into flames, and of course the death of over 70 people.
Pule, it's astonishing that view you get from your position now, looking towards the burnt-out shell of where those 70 people were living. But as Pule says, you're starting to get a sense of just how big this issue is. This is actually the building that Heidi Giokos was pointing to earlier in the morning when she was referring to a couple of shacks on top of a roof. That's a burnt-out part of the building. But yeah, Heidi, I think as we come back down to you on ground level, you could clearly see the shacks that you were pointing out of that building that's opposite the burnt-out shell. And you were saying that even if you look at it, it looks like it could be a very serious concern for the city. Heidi, I apologize for that. Let me come back to you on the ground floor, on the ground level of that building. Just wrap up what you were saying, because you were getting us, I think, a much closer view of what that building looked like inside. I see you've moved away, but it just gives you a real sense of how difficult it must have been to get out amidst all of that mess.
Yes, certainly. And just a point of where Pule actually is. We do know that yesterday Action SA leader and former mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Herman Mashaba, had actually alluded to buildings not far from this one. And he was speaking about that building, saying all of this is a ticking time bomb, and it's going to only get worse if these hijacked buildings and buildings that have now been turned into informal settlements are not addressed and urgently addressed. I do spot the MMC for public safety, but we will try and get him on a little later. It's okay. Let's just show you that this part of the section, as much as it doesn't seem as gutted as other sections of the building, it is definitely gutted on the inside, Gareth, and these visuals once again show you the desperation that many of these who managed to survive and escape, the extreme measures that they went to. The gentleman, the survivor, Tom, that we were speaking to earlier on, that broke his leg jumping from the 4th floor. You can see that there are blankets, there are mattresses, there are curtains, even clothes, people throwing whatever they can out just to have a softer landing in terms of needing to jump from the 4th, 5th, whatever floor it might have been. You can only imagine the panic and the pandemonium, but definitely the shots that Pule was showing you gives you an overview of what was really happening in this building. Nobody really understands the extent of the informal structures that were set up. We were just told that there were shacks inside, there were hundreds of people living that should have not been living. I mean, in a one-bedroom apartment, if I can give context, or one room, that probably was divided into 2 or 3, really showing you how that was overcapacitated and probably contributed to the pandemonium of people really trying to get out of this building. It speaks to the devastation, it speaks to the seriousness of the city needing to urgently address this. And yesterday, there was some bit of defensiveness from the city, especially during that very early morning briefing, to say they have done all they can, they are doing all they can, and it's unfortunate. At that time, I think it was 56 people that had been reported to have died in this, and now that's moved to over 70. So there's a serious desperation, and the tragedy here is that when tragedy hits, there's always a panic mode, and we're always reactive instead of trying to sort this out before it actually happens. So maybe this is a wake-up call, Gareth, and the president speaking to that, saying perhaps this is a wake-up call, but the wake-up call should have come long ago, because this has been probably an over-decade issue in terms of hijacked buildings.
Yeah, Pule still on top of that roof for us as well. Heidi, let's quickly go back up to Pule. I think he's about to speak to maybe one person living in that building. Pule, back to you.
We are safe because of I don't have black and I just because it's already black, it's already at least for recommendation. I would do at least the banana because we are most. But we are
Nalabana by Kai.
They don't wait 3.
La Patalarent.
Batal.
Ona Mutotang Cancelet.
I am to village. I will get it.
Kinaka Kailinam.
Can I lay about 4 years?
4 years living here.
Yeah.
When this building, Hanicha, Lebon. Lindsay, Nali show me your family relatives who are living there.
Nali show me the gat. Just when I get to the first one, I feel a mole. So, no roads, I think I'm not sure. But you don't have like an SR in you, like never share the like a camel for like do laugh.
Miracle on a liberca letting.
Next week, is will take a talk to.
Okay. Government, I see it more battle to
so the government because there's a toilet, toilet,
toilet alone again.
Government.
Me team Tlakas Likraga. Connected Mogai.
I can show him. I think parts
like us on.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Bolema.
41 years.
41. Thank you very much, Batsidi. So speaking to us, Gareth, they're essentially saying that she lives with 3 children, and of course, the father of the children here in this mini shack that you see on top, erected on top of this roof here. They do have electricity, they do have water, but it seems as though we're getting a sense that it's illegally connected, because she says she doesn't know where she's getting it from, where she's getting the utility services from. But also, she's not paying any rent. She's living here for free. She's been living here for 4 years as well. And she says that they feel safe living here because there isn't anywhere else they could go. So they they decided to erect this shelter here, and they haven't received any form of assistance. But you can see, Gareth, what we're witnessing as well. Earlier when we were here, we saw a few individuals who are residing here carrying a primer stove, of course using paraffin. So those are some of the elements which could potentially lead to buildings being gutted by flames, and which was quite dangerous as well. You'd remember just about a month ago, I was at the Marshall House, which was gutted by flames as well, here in Marshalltown as well. It seems as though, like Heidi was saying, Action SA leader Herman Mashaba said that this area is quite problematic, because even at Marshall House, the building, of course, was gutted by flames. But a few minutes later, after the firefighters had brought down the fire, the residents went back again into that building. I tried to get comment from the city of Joburg regarding that and regarding the safety and whether as though they are inspecting that building. I failed. I could not get comment because there simply wasn't any comment. And essentially, these are the potential hazardous dangers and elements that which could lead to buildings actually, being on fire as well. And I just want to show you again, just before I let you go, Gareth, you can see on shot here, my colleague Asanda will show you this building as well, decayed to its lowest form. And it's just a matter of time since until something happens. And these are, of course, the challenges the city of Johannesburg is facing. We often go to Council Job, to the council where the politicians and politics will discuss the affairs of the metro. And sometimes, while we are attending these council sessions, you get a sense that there's a lot of, egotistical disputes that are taking place there. There are emotions flying all over. While these pertinent issues take a backseat, service delivery is all residents want. And these buildings, as a result, are not being maintained. And this is often why we'd see such, dangerous, hazardous things happen to the city. And what is the end result? Lives are costed at the end of the day.
Yeah, maybe council meeting should be hosted in one of those buildings, and maybe you'll get a different sense of how politicians feel about this as well. Certainly politicians not getting a lot of love, all of them saying they're doing everything they can, but is that good enough? Pule Letshwiti-Jones, thank you very much. Also Heidi Giokos on the ground level, and also Bafedile Moerane, our reporters on the ground. And